going to take a quick walk through the Toqueflake hat that was designed for this skill builder box, the Stranded Colourwork knitting, by Faye Kennington, also known as Ukeeknits. So Faye designed this to be the perfect beginner project for those who have never done stranded colourwork before. Of course, if you are familiar with this technique, it should be a quick and fun project for you to enjoy. So looking through the pattern, you can see that the hat is written for 3 different sizes and that it should fit with 0 to 1 inch of negative ease or 0 to 2.5 centimeters of negative ease. So what this means is that the hat should be the same size or a little bit smaller than your actual head size, just to make sure that it fits snugly and is not loose. So looking ahead to the yarn, you can see that the pattern is written for 2 colors, a main color and a contrast color, shown here in Orchid and Shiitake. And the yardage is listed for the 3 different sizes, how much yarn you'll need. So there's plenty of yarn in your box. You should have lots to knit a couple of different hats. Depending on the size, you may need to swap the colors. So knit one with one color as the main color and then swap them so that the other color becomes the main color for the second hat, which would be fun to see the difference in how the pattern looks in the 2 colors as well. Moving on to the needles, you can see that here it's listed as a 4.5 millimeter 16-inch circular needle, or the size that you need to obtain the gauge. So this is the gauge that you swatched for earlier. So as we mentioned before, stranded color work can really vary between knitters. Some people knit quite loosely, some quite tightly. So don't worry if you need a different needle size to get the gauge, just use the one that works for you. Here it's also listed to use a smaller needle size for the ribbing and for the top of the hat shaping. So this will depend a little bit on how different your gauge was from your regular stockinette gauge. So you may use the same size of needles or maybe go down just slightly to get that slightly smaller ribbing, but this will be dependent on knitter to knitter. You'll also need a stitch marker to mark the beginning of the round and a yarn needle just to weave in the ends. So looking through the pattern, you're going to cast on the stitches, join for working in the round, work a little bit of ribbing, and then after the ribbing, you'll increase a little bit before going on to the colorwork chart. So here you can look at the chart and decide which color is going to become the background and the foreground color, thinking about the color dominance that we've talked about before. So which yarn is held above and which below. And you may want to switch between the sections depending on which color you want to be more prominent. You can also look and see if there's any long strands of yarn that you may want to catch the floats. So in this particular pattern, this particular design, there aren't any really long floats on round 14. I think there's a stretch of 5 stitches. So you could catch the float there if you want, or you could just leave it and not worry about it for this particular pattern. After the colorwork is finished, you're going to start shaping the top of the crown. So here it says to switch to double pointed needles when the circular is no longer comfortable to use. So as you shape that crown and you have fewer and fewer stitches, they won't be able to stretch all the way around your 16-inch circular needle. So at this point you can switch to double pointed needles, or if you're familiar with the magic loop technique, you could also switch to a longer circular needle and do it with magic loop. So the crown shaping is quite straightforward with some slip knits and knit 2 together. And then at the end, you're just going to block your hat and add a pom-pom to the top and you're done. So we're just going to go through a couple of techniques if this is knitting in the round is new to you or some of the basic knitting techniques are new to you. So I'll start by joining for working in the round. So I've cast on my stitches, ready to join. And the main thing that you want to watch for is that your stitches are not twisted on the needle, because if they're twisted on the needle and then you join and start knitting, you're going to end up with a Mobius loop or a Mobius strip, which can be really fun for a cowl. There are patterns that do this on purpose, but Mobius hat might not be so practical. So you're just going to go around, make sure that all your stitches are all aligned without any twists. I'm just making sure that that bottom of that cast on edge is all towards the center here. And then I'm ready to join. And to join, you simply start knitting in that first stitch. So I'm going to add a stitch marker. This just marks the beginning of my round. And I'll show you a trick at the end if you don't have a stitch marker handy. And you're going to go straight on to your knit 1, purl 1 rib. So knitting in the first stitch, bringing the yarn between the needles in between each knit and purl stitch as you go. So the first section of the hat is this knit 1, purl 1 ribbing to create that edge. And then after the ribbing, before you go into the stranded color work, you are going to work some backwards loop increases. So lots of ways to increase, but in this pattern, it uses a backwards loop. So I'm just going to show you how to do that. So you're going to take your yarn and you're going to loop it around, making a loop like this, and then place it on your needle, and then just gently snug it up. And then go on. And then when you knit that, it's going to have a little twist in it, so you won't have a hole in your knitting. So if you did a regular yarn over, just like this, then you would end up with a hole in the next round. So instead, you're going to add that little twist before putting it on your needle. And I can see that the yarn is coming from this side of that new loop, meaning that that's correct and it's got that twist in it. Let's show that one more time. Just that backwards loop. And I just kind of slide it with my finger and add it on there. So that's your make one increase. And then when you get to the top of the hat, there are some decreases, which are probably familiar to many of you, the knit 2 together and the slip slip knit. So knit 2 together, it's very straightforward. You're just going to insert your needle into 2 stitches at once. So instead of just going through one, you're going to insert through the next 2 stitches, making sure that you've really caught it all the way through, and knit, and then that decreases. So those 2 stitches became 1. So one more time, the knit 2 together, insert it through both, wrap the yarn around, and knit it as usual. The slip slip knit just takes a little bit more because you need to change the orientation of the stitches. So you're going to slip one knitwise, slip the second one knitwise, insert your needle through the front, and knit them together from that position. So again, a slip slip knit is slip, slip, insert the needle, and knit the 2 stitches together. So this creates a left leaning decrease as opposed to the right leaning decrease. So the last little trick I promised to show is if you don't have a stitch marker handy, you can make one with a scrap piece of yarn just by making a slip knot and using that as your stitch marker on your needle between your stitches. So just make sure to use a contrasting color yarn so that you don't accidentally knit it, but that's a quick and easy way to just add a stitch marker to your knitting. So I hope you enjoy knitting the Toqueflake pattern. We can't wait to see all your finished projects and see how you get along with stranded knitting.